So as we focus on the road to 2024 and the elections, some political analysts are concerned about the poor turnout of young voters at the polls. Now, if recent local government election figures are anything to go by, it could be a big worry for next year's vote. According to Stats SA, there are about 14 million unregistered young people who are eligible to vote. It also indicates that youth voter turnout has declined in the 2021 local government elections. So for more on the power of the young vote, let's bring in the Institute of Election Management Services Executive Chair, Tselane, who's also, of course, the former Deputy Chairperson of the IEC. Dr. Tselane, it's always great getting your take on these issues. Thanks so much indeed for making time. And we speak about the young vote or the youth vote around every election, quite frankly. And I wonder if you reckon we're asking different questions around how to sort out this issue of young people, frankly, being disillusioned by the electoral system.
Thank you very much for having me, Ayanda. I think there are quite a number of issues. Firstly, that lack of service delivery, particularly to the issues that affect young people, does discredit the democratic project to the extent that young people then feel that there is no need for them to continue to participate in the electoral processes. But the second and the most important is that most of the political parties do not actually reach young people in platforms where they are always available. They prefer to use traditional methods of attracting voters to participate in electoral processes. And this is largely because their campaigns are not really youth-led. They are led by people who don't actually understand the issues that affect young people. And then therefore, even when they try to include the issues that affect young people, those issues are just given almost like a cursory look, and they are not really fundamental part of the campaigns and manifestos of the political parties.
Yeah. Without necessarily backing any particular party, I wonder whether you reckon there is an organization in the country that's starting to get that right. I mean, the EFF traditionally is seen as a much younger party, but one wonders whether they're able, for instance, to respond to the issue that you've raised of having meaningful inclusion of young people in campaigns so that they resonate with those constituencies.
Well, like you've correctly pointed out, I mean, the EFF is probably one of the few organizations that really has attracted young people. I don't want to speak specifically about their methodologies and processes of campaigning, but if you look at just the profile of the EFF, you'd find that the majority in the leadership and in different structures are actually young people.
Yeah. When it also comes to I always find the discussions around, attracting young people to the polls very interesting because it's almost as if we view this particular population as being a homogenous group, right? Like young people like this, or young people are aggrieved by this particular issue. But it's a whole lot more nuanced than that, right? The experience of young people, even in South Africa alone, is different.
Absolutely. And you are correct that the youth are not a homogeneous entity. You've got different persuasions, political persuasions, and different interests. But one thing that actually brings them together is the fact that they are young people, and then therefore their interests in society are different from those who represent the older generation. And then therefore when you're working with young people, it is important that the young people themselves take a lead in terms of developing processes that would actually enable political parties or whatever formation that they have to attract young people to their fold.
Yeah. Shall we speak about the power that young people have nonetheless come next year's elections? I mean, part of what I've been able to read and listening to people who follow these trends quite closely, they talk about there being a swing really that might take place in next year's polls, such that if all eligible young people came out to vote, they very well may determine the outcome of these elections.
Definitely. The young people, as you have indicated, they are in the majority, and the majority of them are currently unregistered. And then if there could be a campaign that would actually make them feel part of the process and register in great numbers, they could actually make a difference. Of course, it would depend largely on which political party would actually be able to attract the majority of those young people. But that political party would definitely be able to make a significant impact in terms of representation once they are able to speak the language that young people speak. They are able to go to their platforms and they are able to attract them to participate in the electoral processes.
It's also a challenge for the IEC, isn't it? Right? Because part of their responsibility is to ensure that all eligible people do make the effort to register and hopefully ultimately vote.
The legitimacy of the elections is largely, if I could put it this way, that it is largely going to be made by whether there is lower voter turnout or higher voter turnout. So the Electoral Commission has got the responsibility to make sure that more and more people are able to register to participate in the process. So the sooner they start with their voter education processes and civic education, the better. As I've indicated, that the voter turnout will basically determine the legitimacy of the electoral processes.
Yeah. Speaking about that, it's been very interesting watching the trends on the continent. Countries like Zambia in their recent election, Nigeria also. There's been a lot of talk around how, the youth vote in particular is the different aspect in this particular poll, and in fact has made it quite difficult for people to call what the outcome may actually look like. And I suppose it might be a bit too soon for us to get a sense of whether or not that fervor might actually infiltrate into our own country come 2024.
Yeah, it is too early, especially because the figures that you have indicated at the beginning, to say that the majority of young people have not as yet registered, is something that still has to be attended to. So we can only be able to tell and make a prediction once voter registration has taken place for 2024 elections, and we know how many young people have actually have registered to participate in elections, because only those who are registered will be able to participate in electoral processes. So we can only be able to make a determination at that stage, or try to make a calculated guess in terms of what impact youth participation could actually make for 2024 elections.
Are we able to glean any lessons from these countries, though? I mean, is there anything in particular that they got right? I mean, part of what we were able to ascertain, though, is that people are so aggrieved that in many instances they feel like voting makes a difference. The sentiment in our country, though, has felt different. We found that sometimes people are aggrieved and instead of going out to vote, they stay at home.
Yeah, that's the problem that we have had in terms of the past few elections where apathy sets in. And it is largely as a result of what I said earlier on, that lack of service delivery sometimes discredit the whole democratic project. So when people feel that their issues are not being addressed, they feel that it is useless and futile for them to continue to participate in the electoral processes.
Tessa Dooms, of course, speaks a lot about voting patterns and, tries to read into the data. Part of what she argues is that young people don't stay at home because they're apathetic, but it's largely because they don't get the desired outcome even after voting. In other words, the elected officials themselves, it appears, are not able to help them realize whatever aspirations they had. It's a much more nuanced approach, I suppose, to the voting system itself, and I suppose puts a lot of weight on politicians who effectively get into power to, at the very least, follow through on the promises they make, especially to young people.
I agree with her, because at the end of the day, the question that we've got to ask ourselves is whether the democratic outcome does actually meet the expectations of young people. And if it does not meet the expectations of young people, of course it will discredit the whole electoral processes to the extent that they end up not really participating in the elections.
Yeah, without a doubt. Right. Tselane, thanks very much indeed for helping us think through these many issues. I don't think it's ever too early to talk about the elections, especially in a context like ours where young people potentially have so much power. I appreciate your time on the AM report. Tselane is the Executive Chair of the Institute of Election Management Services, also the former IEC Deputy Chairperson.